Good evening. Whoa. Excuse me. Good evening. I would like to welcome you to the April 25th, 2023 meeting of the City Plan Commission. Before we begin, I will outline the procedure that we will follow for our public hearing. As each agenda item is called, the applicant or his or her representatives and persons for the request will be allowed to speak. Then persons against the request will be allowed to speak. If there is opposition to the request, the applicant will be allowed to make a short rebuttal. All persons wishing to speak need to come to the microphone at the front of the room. Please state your name and address for the record. All statements made should be relevant to the agenda item and be limited to 3 minutes. If there are several persons in favor of or opposed to a request, we encourage you to allow 1 or 2 persons to act as spokesperson for the group. If you like, a spokesperson for a group may request that the group stand and be recognized. While public discourse is very important to the Commission, we have to maintain order in the meeting so that all persons may be heard and city business may be conducted. If so directed by me, the Sergeant at Arms shall remove from this meeting any person while addressing the Commission or while attending the Commission meeting, making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, who becomes boisterous, or making unauthorized remarks from the audience, stomping of feet, whistles, yells, or similar demonstrations. The Commission members have reviewed each of these items in a previous work session. The recommendations we make tonight to the City Council will be based on the work session and the information provided by staff, as well as any additional information presented tonight. After completing the hearing on each item, the Commission will consider action on the item. The action taken tonight on these items will be in the form of a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will also conduct a hearing on these items, which will be held on Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 in the Bosque Theater of the Waco Convention Center, 100 Washington Avenue. The record and recommendation of the Plan Commission and the new testimony will be considered by the Council at that time. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our March 28th, 2023 work session and business meetings, and March 28th, 2023 work session and business meetings. Are there any changes or additions? Seeing none, they stand approved as written. What is the first item on our agenda?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. We do have the subdivision plats. We do want to break them up into the approved, recommended for approval, and then recommended for approval with conditions. So we'll start with the recommended for approval. This is a public hearing on the following subdivision plats. Final plat and construction plans of the Castle Rock Addition Phase 2, final plat and construction plans of the Eagle Landing Addition, and then final plat and construction plans of Floyd Casey Addition. And staff does recommend approval of all 3 of these plats.
Thank you. We will open the public hearing on these items. Are the applicants or his or her representative here to speak tonight? Is anyone else here to speak in favor on these items? Anyone here to speak in opposition on these items? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval on these 3 plats from city staff. We'll entertain a motion or discussion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve based on city staff recommendations.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Vickers, second by Mr. Lane. Any final discussion? Please poll the Commission.
Go.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Jefferson? Yes. Lane? Yes. Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes.
Subdivision items 1 and 2, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, sir, this is a public hearing on the following subdivision plats, final plat and construction plans of the Prairie View Estates Edition, ETJ, and then final plat and construction plans of the Fidel Edition. Staff does recommend approval with the conditions on these plats.
We'll open our public hearing on these items. Are the applicants or his or her representative here to speak tonight? Is there anyone here to speak in favor on these items? Anyone here to speak in opposition to these items? Come on down if you can just state your name, address, and which of the 2 plots you're in reference to.
Excuse me, my name is David McMahon. I own 2 adjacent properties to the Prairie View Estates subdivision. I know some of this stuff is outside of the council's purview, but no notification of adjacent property owners, no EIR, no traffic study. Everybody knows what traffic on Old Arena Road is like now. I know it's outside the city's purview, but it's hardly a way to adequately address or consider the impact of the development on its neighbors. Things that are in your purview are grading and drainage. Currently, the way the site next door, the 52 acres that comprises Prairie View Estates, gently slopes down to two of my properties. And the water sheet drains across, waters the pastures, is not concentrated at all. According to the topography utility map in the plans for the Prairie View Estates, they have two discharge locations that they say are discharging into drainage channels on my property. Those drainage channels on my property are 8 to 10 inches deep, and they're picking up water from 74 acres across Old Arena Road that runs through the Prairie View Estates. They're picking up the water off the 52 acres that comprise Prairie View Estates, and instead of it draining across the entire 600-foot property line, they're focusing it on two locations. As it is now, I've already had water overtop my dam and damage my two drive-over outfall structures. Concentrating that water into those two drainage channels is probably going to blow my dam out. I would like for the council to continue this item until further drainage studies can be done and the impact of concentrating this water the way the plan shows is further studied and mitigated. I don't think that's asking too much, and I would like assurances that the concerns and the solutions to this are made conditions of approval if this plan is voted on to go forward. Appreciate you guys' time. I appreciate you listening to me. I hope you take my concerns seriously and help me look into it.
Thank you. Perhaps a question to city staff. Can y'all speak to the drainage output, drainage situation on adjoining properties?
Todd Curtis to come down with our engineering department.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I want to acknowledge the concerns of the resident, first of all. So those are valid concerns that he has about the drainage coming onto his property. We have looked at it within the context of the subdivision ordinance that we have and the provisions that we have there. The engineer has satisfied, as far as we believe, all the requirements to develop the site and proceed with the plans that they have. If the downstream property owner, is interested in, providing analysis or anything like that from a licensed civil engineer, something that might, provide more information and bring something to light specifically, we'd be happy to look at that and take a closer look at it. But as far as what's been done now, in relation from one property draining onto the other, our understanding is that the amount of water that will be draining onto his property is no greater than what has been in history with respect to whether or not it's been concentrated. That may be something that they could look at. In terms of our analysis, what we look at is the overall peak flow discharge during various events. A 2-year storm, 10-year, 25 and 100-year storm, and whether or not it's discharging into a natural channel, a natural drainage course. Based on the information we have, that's what we see. And so that serves as the basis for the approval that we've recommended tonight. And I mean, I would maintain that, that approval and that recommendation at this point right now. If you have any questions, I can, hopefully address them.
Is there any, other than what we have in our packets, did the applicant submit any additional, drainage information with their application, do you know, or is everything included on the maps in the packet?
Have they submitted any extra information?
I guess my question is like, would there be additional information that the adjoining property owner could take a look at that drove that recommendation, or not saying it's right, wrong, or anything, just like, is this the totality of kind of the information that was used in that decision?
Mr. Chair,
there's
I can
always
answer
more,
that, yeah, so in your packet, we just include the plat document, just because the construction plans are so lengthy, and so, but that is something that, that is part of the application and can be looked at, you know, by the public, you know, if they want to contact staff. This is a approval with conditions, so it will have to come back to you, meeting those outstanding conditions, you know, before it goes on to city council.
Just a question generally on the study. So whenever y'all are looking at the plans to see if whatever ordinances or requirements are met, is there an actual property inspection that goes on, or are there just assumptions made about where the drainage would go? Does that question make sense? Has someone been out there to look at the other property to see where the drainage would collect from the two spots?
We'll go out to sites if there's things that are unclear from the plans, but, you know, I mean, that's not necessarily required or something that we always do. We'll typically start with the topography for the sites, and if there's anything uncertain based on that, then we might go out and take a look.
Do you know if that happened in this case or not?
I didn't go out there. Based on the topography alone, from what the consultants provided, it was clear that, you know, their initial analysis didn't capture everything that was going on at the property. So within the second analysis, they you know, broadened their scope and view on the property and try to capture more fully what is flowing onto the downstream properties.
Yeah, if you'd like to come down, that's fine. We still have our hearing open.
I did look at the additional plans that were on the website. I don't believe there's anything that picks up the water on the 74 acres across Old Arena Road. There is no grading plan, so there's no way to know exactly how the grading is going to impact the drainage. There is a drainage plan, and I've been a developer for 42 years. I've developed billions of dollars worth of real estate in the western United States, licensed from Florida to California as a general contractor. I've never been allowed to, without consider the impacts, focus discharge onto somebody else's property that's likely to cause damage. That just makes no sense to me at all. So I would just like to say, I think that the review of this has been inadequate in looking at the drawings. I think they're inadequate. And I would just like this item to receive more attention and consideration before it's passed on for approval.
Given the concerns of the adjoining property owners, or I don't know if it would be a condition on the preliminary plat or if it would be, but would there be a condition or wording that we could include to perhaps address those concerns?
So there are engineering conditions on here. Todd, are these dealing with that, or they're different?
I would have to be refreshed.
Yeah, so we do have 3 engineering conditions that still haven't been met. Provide hydraulic calculations for channel reaches and culverts. 100-year flow may overtop culverts, but shall be fully contained within easement and right-of-way and/or right-of-way. Provide 24 inches of minimum cover over storm drain, or use ASTM C-850. And then there's a question, is OS3 accounted for in the detention pond outlet structure sizing?
Okay. So I mean, all those are general engineering comments. They don't address specifically what the gentleman who's come here tonight is specifically referring to, though.
If we're to approve with conditions as recommended, for the preliminary, before the final plat was granted, would there be the time to address the concerns?
Our recommendation is approved with conditions, so there'll have to be a resubmittal. Those were just engineering conditions. There's also some planning conditions and utility conditions. And so they'll have to resubmit meeting these conditions, and it will come back to the Plan Commission. And we can give you a more detailed analysis of, what the neighboring property has brought up and how they have met the requirements of our ordinance.
If we don't add that as a condition now, are we allowed to bring it on later if the study's done and it's determined that the drainage does need to be,
Yeah,
amended?
so all the Plan Commission can do in regards to plat is make sure that they've met all the conditions that are in our ordinances. And so we can't add any additional conditions. It's an administrative approval in the state of Texas, not, we can't add, like zonings, we can add conditions
Right.
or different things, but for plats, if they meet all the requirements, then by state law, the city has to approve the platted construction plans. But we can, when this comes back to the Plan Commission, we can make sure that we cover how we determine that it meets all the ordinance requirements in relation to the concerns that were brought up.
Okay.
Any additional discussion? We'll close our, well, is there anyone else here to speak who has not spoken on this item? Okay, we're going to close our public hearing. As we've noted, recommendation of approval with conditions on both the Prairie View Estates edition as well as the Fadal edition. We'll entertain either a motion or discussion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve with conditions from the city.
Second.
Motion for approval with conditions by Mr. Vickers, second by Mr. Smith. Any final discussion?
I may just make the point in seconding it that I think that there are some valid concerns brought up by the other property owner. But I do trust that city's done their diligence as far as the initial approval, making sure that the ordinances were met. And then, obviously, if there is an issue moving forward, then I'm sure it would be addressed before the final plat was approved. So that's why I seconded the motion.
Yeah, I echo that. I think the concerns are valid, and we need to dig deeper, but also understand that we can't do that until there's additional review and information provided, and we also have limited purview per the city's, dynamic with ordinances and our role here. But I think we want to move it forward and dig a little deeper and understand.
As a point of clarification, we originally were discussing both subdivision plats 1 and 2 as approval with conditions. Is the motion as to both of those?
Yes.
Okay.
Please poll the commission.
Briscoe,
Yes.
Cole. Yes. Embry,
Yes.
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 Lane.
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Yes.
In the case of Z-22-75, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a continuation of a public hearing on request from Arbelio Vela and Ana Gonzalez Laura, a property located at 1803 Avondale Avenue to rezone from R1B to O3. Staff does recommend disapproval of the request based on the following findings. One, R1B zoning is the only zoning designation for single-family for the single-family Coates Edition, which includes Avondale, Seneca, and Algonquin Avenues. Two, the existing R1B zoning is more compatible with the existing single-family uses on the property than the proposed O3 zoning. And three, the property is oriented towards Avondale Avenue, which is classified as a local street and has limited access to Trice Avenue and North 18th Street, which is not conducive for office or limited commercial development.
Thank you. We'll open our public hearing. Is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak tonight? State your name and address and any comments you have for the commission.
Belio Vela, my wife Ana Gonzalez, and I know we've had this discussion for going on 5 months now. So I would hope as well with the 5 months that we've already invested this, because we haven't done anything with the property because we don't know which way we're going. You know, we're hoping we go commercial. And I know last time we discussed about the privacy fence and what that would look like and how that would create a problem if it was a residential property. Just with the sightlines, I'm not sure if y'all were able to look into that. I know that's, but other than any more additional information, I think we've kind of exhausted all the information that we can provide to y'all. So I'm hoping that y'all can see what we see and definitely help us in this situation.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions, comments for the applicant? All right. Well, we appreciate you staying with us all these months. So, yeah. All right, well, I think that's all we have for now. Is anyone else here to speak in favor on this item? Is anyone here to speak in opposition on this item? Okay, we will close our public hearing. We have a recommendation of disapproval from city staff. Probably want to have some conversation on this guy, but we'll entertain a motion regardless.
I move that we disapprove based on staff findings.
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith for disapproval, second by Ms. Briscoe. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Briscoe? Yes. Cole? Yes. Embry? Yes. Fajardo?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Jefferson?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
No. I would note, before we move on to our next item, I think all of us up here, ultimately, I'll speak for myself, ultimately made a decision not based off your end use, but on ultimate end use for the property. So for what that's worth, which may not be a lot, I just want you to know that that's the rationale for many of us. So. In the case of Z-23-12, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, just to clarify, the Plan Commission recommendation on that case will go to the City Council.
Yes.
And so the City Council will also have a public hearing on that
Yes.
case as well. So for public hearing 12, this is a public hearing on a request from Seth Sampson on behalf of Encore Electric Delivery Company, LLC, a property located at 601 South Martin Luther King Junior Boulevard for a special permit for electrical substation in M2 and C3 zoning districts. Staff does recommend approval of the special permit subject to the special provisions and conditions and based on the following findings. One, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the purposes and intent of Chapter 28 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco. Two, that the proposed use is compatible with the appropriate and orderly development of the area in which it is located. Three, that the proposed use will not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception. And four, that the available community facilities and services, including the road system, provided access to the proposed use are adequate for the proposed use. I did want to point out a couple of the special conditions. One is that coordination shall take place between the developer and the city staff to finalize design of the new green space trail area between substation and I-35. And then there are also some boundary landscaping requirements to be installed along the road frontages.
Thank you. We'll open our public hearing. The applicant can come up, state your name and address, and any comments to the commission.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman Harris, Mr. Peters. My name is Michael Baldwin. I'm the Encore South Region Manager, 3620 Franklin Avenue in Waco. Joining me this evening for questions is Seth Sampson. He's Encore's right-of-way siting specialist.
Any, go ahead.
That was fine, yeah. As Michael said, my name is Seth Sampson. I'm a siting specialist for Encore. Here to answer any questions that you may have. So open it up back to both of you guys.
Awesome. Any questions?
You have an important question that I'm sure you can't answer, but at what point are you going to move that substation so we can put something cool there? That was a joke. Please do not feel like you need to answer that question. Yeah. Yeah.
That one's staying for quite some
Time.
time.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it, y'all. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor on this item? Anyone here to speak in opposition on this item? All right. We'll close up our public hearing. Have a recommendation of approval from city staff. We'll entertain either discussion or a motion.
I move that we recommend approval based on staff findings.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Jefferson. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Briscoe? Yes. Cole?
Yes.
Embry?
Yes.
Fajardo?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Jefferson?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes.
In the case of Z-23-13, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on request from Harris Earnhardt on behalf of WTX Development Company LLC, John Kroll and Barbara Allen Bloom for properties located at 421 and 425 Proctor Avenue, 2105 and 2117 North 5th Street to rezone from R2 to O3. Staff does recommend approval of the request to change the zoning from R2 to O3 based on the following findings. One, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan in the Imagine Waco, a plan for greater downtown. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O3 zoning. 3, the property meets all area and width requirements for O3 zoning. 4, there is a O3 zoning near the subject property. And 5, the proposed O3 zoning is low-intensity mixed-use zoning district that is compatible with the surrounding area and the development pattern along 4th and 5th Street corridor.
Thank you. We'll open our public hearing. Is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak tonight? Is anyone else here to speak in favor on this item? Is anyone here to speak in opposition to this item? We'll close our public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval by city staff. Do you have any conversation for him?
I'd like to move for approval in accordance with the city staff findings.
Second.
All right. Any final discussion? Please poll the motion.
Briscoe? Yes. Cole?
Yes.
Embry?
Yes.
Fajardo?
Yes.
Harris?
No.
Jefferson? Yes. Lane?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes. In the case of ABD-23-4, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Waco Independent School District for the abandonment of a portion of South 19th Street between properties known as 2025 South 18th Street and 2025 South 19th Street, described as a .50 acre or 22,098 square feet tract of land, being a portion of South 19th Street, a 50-foot right-of-way dedicated in volume 654, page 35 of the deed records in McLennan County, Texas, in the city of Waco, McLennan County, Texas. Staff does recommend approval of the request based on the following findings. Public use of the right-of-way is not required for proper flow of traffic or for emergency vehicle access to the area. And 2, the utility access for surrounding property is not adversely impacted by the abandonment of the right-of-way. We do have one condition that a 20-foot utility easement shall be retained where facilities are located within the right-of-way, or the utilities shall be relocated at developer's expense.
Thank you. We will open our public hearing. Is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak tonight? Is anyone else here to speak in favor on this item? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this item? Okay, we'll close our public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval with conditions from city staff, and we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move
We approve based on city staff recommendations.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cole, second by Ms. Briscoe. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Briscoe? Yes. Cole? Yes. Embry?
Yes.
Fajardo?
Yes.
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 Lane?
Yes.
Smith? Yes. Vickers?
Yes.
On our next agenda item are ordinance amendments. What is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, sir. This is a continuance of a public hearing to consider an ordinance amendment to Chapter 28 zoning of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Waco, Texas, for the purposes of amending the boundaries of the Brazos River Corridor District overlay and making changes related to lighting in residential areas, lot coverage, and landscaping requirements. Just for a brief overview of the proposed changes, the changes include expanding district boundaries to include all the Cameron Park Neighborhood Association and properties along 19th Street, which have similar characteristics to properties that are already located within the overlay. It adds clarification of when regulations apply. Regulations only apply to new development or substantial renovations to existing development, which is added as a definition in the proposed changes. It removes single-family residential exemptions for lighting and tree planting only. It adds a requirement for the lighting to be shielded downward to limit light pollution. It adds requirements for tree planting in the landscaping section. This already applies to commercial properties, but would add that to residential properties also that are developing. It also adds a tree preservation credit for preservation of significant trees that doesn't exist currently. So if you preserve trees, those can meet your tree planting requirements. And then it adds definitions for what trees, significant trees are, caliper inches, and substantial renovation. And then it adds an exception to the prohibited use section to allow drive-throughs along 18th and 19th Street. Originally there was another portion of the ordinance that added additional maximum impervious requirements within 200 feet of Cameron Park and both rivers adjacent to Cameron Park. Staff recommends taking that addition to the proposed ordinance change out of the recommendation from staff. And then I did want to just briefly kind of go through the different impacts on the different type of development. So for commercial development that's already included in the Brazos River Corridor, the only impact this ordinance has on it, the changes has on it, would be the addition of the lighting requirements where the lights would have to shine down. And then it also provides the tree preservation credit, which currently doesn't exist for preserving existing trees. For residential properties that are already in the overlay, the new requirements would be for the lighting requirements and the tree planting requirements, and that would just be for new construction or substantial renovation. And then for new properties that are being added to the overlay in the expansion area for residential, again, the only items that would apply for residential would be the lighting requirements and the tree planting. And then for commercial property, new commercial property in the expanded area, all the requirements in the overlay would apply to those commercial properties.
Thank you. Our public hearing remains open, so is the applicant or a representative for the applicant here to speak? If you can state your name and address and comments to the commission.
My name is Rick Bostwick. I'm a lawyer here in town with the Beard Colgin firm. I represent three entities and Gloria Young that collectively own property on the east side of the river between MLK and the river, between Faulkner and East Waco Drive. I think I heard, and I guess I'd like to ask the question, that the city is no longer, or has amended its recommendation as to impervious covering percentage requirements.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, and so what is the impervious requirement at this point?
So currently for commercial properties, the maximum impervious requirement is 80%. So that would stay 80% for commercial properties. And then for residential, it's 75, and that would stay 75 for residential. Originally, we did have a revision in there that would expand that to a maximum of 50% coverage, impervious coverage for properties that were within 200 feet of Cameron Park or the rivers adjacent to Cameron Park, but we are recommending that that new requirement be deleted for the recommendation that we're bringing to you tonight.
And with that clarification, that does make a difference to my clients, because the land that they own, which would be used presumably for commercial development, is obviously very limited between MLK and the east shore of the Brazos River. And so the particular limitation, as it was earlier recommended, created a real difficulty, because this property is very limited to begin with. Being in the floodplain poses further limitations, and we were very concerned, and I think I raised this at the last meeting, and so we appreciate the receptivity of the city and the reconsideration of that. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can come down, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Janine McMeans. I'm the president of the Cameron Park Neighborhood Association. And it's super easy in times like this to start saying of them and us, but really it's a we. Like, we are listeners in the Cameron Park Association, and we are only coming here to support what the city is wanting to do. So previous planning commissions and city councils, they put into place the Brazos River Corridor overlay to help protect the community's investment in the Brazos River areas and ensure quality development. New development in all areas of Waco appear to be imminent, and the city has the opportunity to implement and expand upon the vision for the Brazos River Corridor overlay. There's not a question of if the Cameron Park zone or these areas is going to grow. The question we should consider is how is this geographically unique park zone going to grow? Often the Planning Commission, you must deal with perplexing issues where new development standards have to be applied in an area of our Waco community that has grown for years with little or no planning or vision. And with regard to development along 19th Street and the areas near Cameron Park, making the old fit with the new is not going to be a problem. Expanding the BRICO, as we call it, brings about minimal change. I'll quote Barfield when she said, "It's really not going to make any difference. It's really staying the same." Waco leaders had the foresight to get ahead of development with planning the Brazos River Corridor overlay, and the community has benefited because of your smart growth vision. You designed the BRICO to protect the special environmental character of the corridor while promoting continued private and public investment. Thank you for your thoughtful and smart growth vision by having development standards and design guidelines that are intended to preserve the distinctive character and natural beauty of the Brazos River Corridor and to maintain its charm and atmosphere. For several years, to educate and discuss and create awareness, by a significant majority, the Cameron Park Neighborhood Association supports the city's growth vision to the other side of the river. Now, fast forward many years from this original implementation of the BRICO on the east side, and we see that while the current corridor development standards were a good start, there's more detail and an expanded area of design guidelines are needed to supplement those that already exist. And because of The Cameron Park Neighborhood Association supports the city's growth vision to the other side of the river by expanding the Brickell.
Thank you. You can come down, state your name and address, and comments to the commission. Are there any questions? Comments? No. Yeah, come on, do it.
Good evening, and thanks. I want to thank the commission for considering this. My name is David Mills. I live at 2929 Robin Road. I've been in the RCO since I moved there 5 years ago. I'm also a member of the Cameron Park Neighborhood Association. As Janine said, we have done our best to raise awareness of this in our meetings, and we have had several votes of members present after explaining certain things, and there is an overwhelming support of our active members to this proposal. We believe that it's not only going to benefit our neighborhood to unify the neighborhood, which today is only roughly half geographically inside the BRCO. It will now be completely inside, but also that it will help solidify, as Janine says, the city's vision for the city by ultimately beautifying the 19th and 18th Street area, which is essentially a gateway into the city from the airport and China Spring, the northern regions. The provisions for tree preservation, we really support. Safe lighting provisions, and that's really what these lighting provisions are. They promote not only ecological benefit to migrating birds, et cetera, but they also do improve safety for those who implement them. So we're excited about those. Also, the reasonable use limitations of the BRCO today apply already to regions such as MLK, now applying to 18th and 19th Street. We think that will be a benefit, and as well as the construction standards for those commercial properties along 18th and 19th. We think all of this is going to be a great benefit to the neighborhood. I support it, and I know all the neighbors that I speak to support it. Thanks again for your consideration.
State your name and address and any comments you have for the commission.
My name is Lauren Woodruff. I own the home at 3313 Adeline Drive. So I am right along with my neighbors in support of expanding the Brazos River corridor. And I came to mostly speak to the fact that I am not a high earning type of person. So as it turns out, I was not aware of this until recently. I am also part of the Brazos River corridor as far as the property that I own and reside in. I was not aware of that. I purchased the home in 2019. My spouse and myself have very low income as a household, and I'm here to say, despite some of the comments that have been made to the contrary, I do not find that the restrictions inside the Brazos River corridor to be any kind of burden, certainly not an undue burden. Didn't even know I was a part of it. So I am very much in favor of protecting migrating birds, especially. I used to work at the Cameron Park Zoo in the bird department, and I can tell you that city lights are a huge factor in the declining bird populations and all of the ecosystems that rely on them. So they may not live here, but birds fly overhead. They have got to have a dark night sky to navigate, and we live, my neighbors and myself, we live in a park. We live adjacent to a park, and lighting is not a part of wilderness. So if we're gonna keep the 400 plus acres of Cameron Park within our city, it has to still be wilderness area. So the more important point that I'd like to make is that I find no restrictions as part of the BRCO to be any kind of burden upon myself or my spouse. I would not have considered, purchasing a home in such an area if I had known that it was part of such a thing. But now that I know I'm part of it, it doesn't make any difference to me, and I'm very much in favor of what it does promote. Thank you.
No.
Hi, I'm Steve O'Connor, and I live at 419 Mount Lookout. And I want to speak a little bit about the expansion west of the Braco and why I think it's a good thing. I think that area of the park actually does expand west there with the acquisition of the additional 25 acres a couple of years ago by the city. So it's, and I think with the potential of the 19th Street development, potentially the lighting effect on the residents in that area on 17th and 18th, I think that would be a benefit. And we've also shown that in our officer that's come to our neighborhood meetings has stated it's actually safer lighting to have lighting covered. So we're just recommending that, or I'm recommending that you take that into account with your decision. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor on this item? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this item? State your name and address and comments to the commission.
Good evening. Scott James with the law firm of Cherry Johnson, Sigmund and James, here on behalf of Shane Turner, Cody Turner, and Todd Behringer, and specifically their entity, Turner Behringer Development. Same folks I was representing 2 months ago here. Just wanted to point out a few things. And I'm going to read this directly from the website, describing the purpose of the Brazos River Corridor. And I quote, it says the regulations are designed to protect the special environmental character of the corridor. So, the entire focus should be the environmental aspects of the Brazos River and the corridor. And again, I know you guys have looked at these maps hundreds of times through this process, but I just want to point out the part of the corridor where my client's property is adjacent is literally one of the widest, if not the widest portion of the corridor that already exists. And some mention was just made about the 25 acres that the city acquired. That was from my clients. So that expansion of that 25 acres that made the corridor even wider and made Cameron Park even bigger right there. So there's more hundreds of feet, between there and the Brazos River. That's from my clients. My client's property is in, this expanded area. I've had a lot of dealings, emails directly to me. I think Mr. Peters was on there too, from these concerns that were presented to my clients from the neighborhood association. And I printed off these emails. I don't have time to read them all, but concern number one was construction traffic. Like construction traffic when homes are starting to be built in this neighborhood. It's 150 plus homes that I believe has already been approved plat-wise. They're concerned about the streets getting messed up. That has nothing to do with the environment of the Brazos River. Another one here, concern number two, that a fence that would border the property, the yards that are adjacent to Adeline Lane, Adeline Drive, whatever it is, that be some uniform fence. Again, that has nothing to do with the Brazos River, nothing to do with the environment. These are private property owners in the neighborhood association trying to put restrictions on my clients. It's really not my clients, it's the future homeowners, 150 families that are going to live there, and they're trying to use the Brazos River corridor expansion to do that. Now, as I said 2 months ago, my clients' own declarations, their own architectural control committee for this neighborhood that all the builders are going to have to comply with is actually more strict than the Brazos River corridor. Like our landscaping requirements, our lighting requirements, all of that. What we're concerned about though, because when you look through the subterfuge of what's really going on with the neighborhood association, again, as it directs to my clients, is that future restrictions. The nice lady that got up here and spoke earlier was talking about more things need to be done, more things that need to be done. My clients are concerned that millions of dollars are invested in this, and there's going to be builders that come in and invest their money, and then future families, taxpaying citizens that own these homes, that suddenly the requirements change in the Brazos River corridor and it's more onerous. That's their concern. And so again, I believe y'all need to look at this closely. It makes no sense to have that expanded area on an area that's already the widest part. It's already the widest part of the corridor, and we're gonna make it wider to include an area that's undeveloped. If you go by there, it's underbrush and trash. I mean, let's just be honest with ourselves. And in the future, it's gonna be 150, more than 150 really nice homes. So that's our concern. It's nothing against the Brazos River corridor. It's against the use by this homeowners association to try to improve.
Hold on for everybody. We regularly allow additional time. And so, I understand, but this is not the only time either in this discussion or in others that additional time has been granted to individuals.
If you ask any of the judges in town, I'm infamous for this, so I apologize. A little wordy, but that's our concern. And then one last thing, and again, this doesn't have to do with my clients because this is going to be new construction in a barren area. There's not existing homes, but I'm really concerned, just as a Wacoan living here for the last 30 years, about gentrification. I'm really concerned about these neighborhoods because I represent a lot of those folks in my practice on 19th Street, where those neighborhoods might as well be on the other side of the earth compared to the neighborhood association that's here that are the proponents. And those folks, I know we talked about last time, grandfathered in. If a house is valued on the tax rolls at $70,000 and they want to remodel, add a room for their grandmother or something like that, in this day and age with construction costs and interest rates and inflation, to get to $35,000 in construction costs would be in a blink of an eye. And those folks can't do what they wanted to do to improve their home, and so there's a high likelihood they have to leave. And that's how gentrification occurs. And it's just, that's concerning, and that's just me speaking from the heart. It has nothing to do with my clients, but I felt like I needed to just point that out to the committee. But again, if my clients are included in the Brazos River corridor, we would just ask that they're grandfathered in on any future, future changes in the ordinance, because that will really affect how this is developed. Thank you for letting me go over time. Appreciate all you guys.
Anyone else here to speak in opposition on this item? All right. We'll allow the representative from the Neighborhood Association to make a short rebuttal.
It sounded like a threat, just a little bit. It's not gentrification. It's not. I'm a school teacher. You know that. You know we are not trying to gentrify Cameron Park. Listen, the cliffs of Cameron Park are where the Balcones Escarpment starts. Texas history, all of our 4th and 7th graders. It starts there. That cliff line is literally where the Blackland prairies start, and then it goes towards the hill country. Waco's cool in that way. So the topography of where this neighborhood and this corridor overlay is, it's higher than other areas. It's unique. And it even has the mammoth stuff going on. So the topography is very different than other parts of the city. So as far as gentrification, that's kind of political. It's kind of silly, in one ear, out the other, because it's not true. But what is true is that it is a unique area. If you were born and raised in Waco, you know it's unique. All you got to do is walk out there and you're like, man, I didn't even know this existed. It's very different. And anyone that comes to Waco says, this is different. It's because it's the beginning of the Balcones Escarpment. It's where the cliffs start. It's where the geography changes. And so this is incredible opportunity to retain that uniqueness. Water runoff, development impacts a lot. And the river is invaluable. And you guys have already made decisions to show that. All we're asking is you continue that vision for the next generation, for the kids that I know I will see on your streets. I know I will see some of your kids, or I'll teach them. And you've got to know that this matters. It's not about gentrification. This is really about a bigger view, a longer view that you guys have been blessed to be able to continue on with.
Any questions? Thank you. We will close our public hearing, and we will start off with any discussion that we have. One point of clarification in regards to the Mr. James's concerns about grandfathering in for future changes. If the corridor expansion is passed, while the property would be included in that as it is currently, they would also then have a voice in shaping any additional changes to the corridor rules. Is that correct?
That's correct. Any future changes would have to go through the same similar public hearing process. All property owners would have to be notified of those changes, and when, input would be included in that.
Do you know by chance if that property will be within the Cameron Park Neighborhood Association?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And that's regardless of the.
Sure. Yeah. Any additional discussion? We will entertain a motion.
Clint, can I ask a question? Just to make sure we're all on the same page. Are there any drastic requirements that this is imposing other than that if you do a significant renovation, you have to plant at least one tree and the lighting has to be facing down?
So for residential, those would be the only two requirements it would trigger.
And for commercial?
Commercial, you would have the additional landscaping requirements, and there's some other requirements that would apply. And that would be for the expansion area. So the commercial properties that are already in the corridor, the only change for those would be the lighting. They actually already have the tree planting requirement there for commercial properties. And the changes would allow them to get credit for preserving trees, which right now they do not have that ability to get credit for that.
You were at the meetings. Can you speak to the trade-off of why the decision was to just extend the Brazos River corridor versus just doing a separate overlay that isn't tied into pieces of land that border the river for miles in either direction?
Sure. I think if you look at the characteristics of that residential area that's adjacent to the Brazos River corridor, it's very similar to the residential area that's already in the Brazos River corridor. So I think from a staff standpoint, we felt like expanding the Brazos River corridor and the requirements of that made more sense than creating another overlay that would have very similar requirements and purpose than what's already there. And so that was the reason why there was a expansion instead of doing a new overlay that would apply to the residential areas that are included.
Does the original Brazos River Corridor overlay formation documents, do they speak to Cameron Park explicitly in that as a part of the consideration of the protection of that corridor?
Not specifically.
Mr. Chair, are you seeking a motion? I'm sorry? Are you seeking a motion?
Any additional discussion? Well, I think I'll speak for myself here. I get both arguments on this in terms of, the expansion of the area feeling a little, perhaps broad in connection to the area. At the same time, I understand these are ecosystems that are interconnected, and, Cameron Park is the buffer between the river and this expanded area, and there's no major, somewhat different from other areas of the corridor. There's no large municipal developments, at least on the west side of the riverbank, that kind of serve as a buffer in that place. So really just speaking to, I guess, I think there's a valid rationale in both directions. Certainly the desire to protect the integrity of the park is extremely important to me personally. And, to a degree that, as we've sort of referenced, the additional limitations are fairly minor at this point. So those are sort of things I have ruminating on me. But yeah, that's the only thing I had to offer. Unless anybody else does, we'll definitely open it up for a motion. So.
I guess my thoughts on it would be that, as the proponents of this has stated, previous commissions and previous city councils have desired to protect the Brazos River corridor, and they have created this this corridor in order to do so. And whenever they did that, I'm sure that they looked closely at what the border of that corridor was, and they decided not to include this part that we're looking at right now. And as far as I know, the Brazos River has not expanded. Waco has expanded around it, but the river itself has not grown. And so I'm not sure why we should expand the corridor if the area in the river itself has not expanded. And so that would be a little bit of my concern, is that if this section should have been included, would it not have been done whenever the corridor was created?
We'll open it up for a motion. Or do you have something else?
I was just gonna say, I agree. I was thinking the same thing.
Do I understand correctly that additional land has been added into Cameron Park over the last?
There's 25
acres?
4 or 5 acres more
And
or
that
less.
abuts the land that we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe that does lie within the
Existing corridor?
Yes, lies within the existing corridor. Yeah.
So the existing corridor created space for the little bit of change? Okay.
Sorry, say that again. No. The existing corridor, Clint, maybe you can speak to it. Did that 24-acre acquisition lie within the corridor already, even as a private parcel?
Yeah, there's a portion of it that's in the acreage that was bought by the city from the Turner Behringer Group, that's now City Park. A portion of that is already in the corridor, and then it's in the expansion area as well. It kind of falls in between the two.
Okay,
Yeah,
so not entirely, just partially?
that's correct.
Great, thank you. I only say that to say, as it extends, it does change the question of the expansion of the corridor if additional land is expanded into, right? So it can call into question that particular issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, like I've said, I think there's an argument both ways. I do think you are, I don't know how this relates directly to the Brazos River itself.
Right.
But you do have a level of disjointedness between a part of a neighborhood being within an overlay, sort of subject to that overlay, and a part of the neighborhood that is not. And that's, irregardless of income levels, lot size, et cetera. And they do operate as, together in a lot of ways. And so,
well, I would echo that, and particularly the addition appears to have no undue burden on the new builders, and certainly not on the existing residential lots.
Yeah, and I think given that kind of what is swaying me towards being more inclined to support it is also that, you know, were there to be any future plans for heavier restrictions in the area, that those expanded areas would be, you know, equally involved in the process of forming those, and that our new development that's been referenced would, every one of the residents in that neighborhood would be members of that association, and therefore they themselves able to be just as vocal in those meetings as desired. So. In a motion if anyone wants to.
All right, Mr. Chair, I move to approve per city's recommendation, amendment of the zone, chapter 28, to expand the Brazos River Corridor overlay.
Second.
The motion of approval by Mr. Vickers, second by Ms. Jefferson. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
No.
Cole?
Yes.
Embry?
Yes.
Fajardo?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Jefferson?
Yes.
Lane?
No.
Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes.
Okay. Our final item on our agenda today is a consideration of an ordinance amendment in regards to our subdivision code. So, yeah, you'd present that to us.
Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending various sections in the Appendix B subdivisions and/or Chapter 28 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas, to update the definition of city engineer. This change takes the wording for city engineer to be from the city engineer and/or director of engineering services of the City of Waco to the director of public works of the City of Waco or his or her designee. And staff does recommend approval of this change.
We'll open our public hearing. Is anyone here to speak in favor on this item? Is anyone here to speak in opposition on this item? We'll close our public hearing. Recommendation of approval from city staff. Will either entertain a motion or discussion.
I move that we recommend approval based on staff finding.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Lane. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Yes.
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 Harris?
Yes.
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Smith? Yes. Vickers?
Yes. That is the final item on our agenda. We will adjourn our meeting.